housing market has been relatively strong compared to many other places through the Great Recession and well beyond. And according to real stats, foreclosures may have fallen to a decade low this year. It all adds up to a relatively healthy housing market here in our region. Tom Hozak sees it from the front lines. He's president and CEO of Northwood. Welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I'll ask you the basic question first. How things going when it comes to buying and selling homes these days around here?
It's actually really good. The market in general over the whole nation's been getting better, but the Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania market especially has really solidified. We're finally starting to see a little more activity in the higher price ranges, which was something that was missing. The biggest really issue we have right now is a shortage of homes to sell, shortage of listings. The majority of our homes sell in 45 to 60 days. And so in a lot of areas, there's a real shortage of listings.
What's that done to appreciation in the market around here?
It's certainly making it firmer. We've never really experienced dramatic appreciation or depreciation throughout this whole thing. It's just Western Pennsylvania is kind of steady. But any erosion or downward pressure that foreclosures placed on it, it's certainly eliminating that. And we are starting to see multiple bids. Not so much back like it was 4 or 5 years ago where people were paying way over list price. But a lot of the homes are going for, equivalent to the asking price.
Yeah, I just wanted, looking back at the last 5 years, and I saw some statistics recently from The Economist that I think Pittsburgh is one of the 5 best performing economies over the last 5 years in the United States. We never really dipped, hardly at all, in terms of home prices or anything.
As I like to say, you can't have a hangover if you didn't get invited to the party. So when other parts of the country were seeing 20–30% annual increases in the values of their homes, we were still in that 3–4%. And so we didn't have an overinflated. We didn't have a bubble because the pricing of the houses wasn't overinflated. And so the only real reason that our market dipped at all, and it wasn't so much in value as much as in units, was the changes in the mortgage industry that dried up the liquidity that made it harder for more home buyers to buy. As the liquidity has come back in the mortgage market, and as they've kind of sorted that out, it's really created a great environment. And as I said, the main concern we have here is a lot of sellers still read the newspaper and watch the national news and think that the housing market is still, homes are 30–40% price lower than they were, and that's not the case at all here in our market.
And what, you think that's what's keeping houses off the market right now? People are reluctant to sell them to try to move up because they think they can't get a fair price for the house they've got?
I think that's a part of it. I think the other thing is this is the first time in practically 100 years that we had a general depreciation of the value of homes, and especially to this level. And I think that it's, people used to believe that putting money in your house was like putting money in the bank. It was not a liquid investment, but it was a stable investment. And when you start hearing horror stories about people buying a house and now it's worth half of what they owe on it, that's really, I think, scared people into thinking that maybe real estate isn't the place for them.
Or maybe I'll just stay where I am instead of taking on the additional debt, yes, the additional risk. I might have bought a new house, but maybe not now. Maybe I'll learn to live with what I've got.
Right. Well, and the remodelers have done a lot of work over those last 3 or 4 years as people continued to have children, they continued to need more space, and a lot of them did it where they were. But by the same token, with the low interest rates right now, you can't, homes are never going to be as affordable as they are. Whether you buy high and sell high and buy high, most people have a home to sell. So if the market's real hot, they get a lot of money for their home, and then they go overpay for another home. If the market's down, they get a great, they don't get much in their house, but they get another great deal. The only real change between that affects affordability of your home is the interest rates, and they're at historic lows. And it's just amazing to me, you see people at 2.75% 15-year mortgages. Just unheard of.
Yeah, amazing. I've got, actually, we just had Stu Hoffman on in the first segment talking about the fiscal cliff. Big thing that seems to be on the table is the home, yes, interest deduction. That has to have you quaking a little bit.
It does. I'm one of those people who like to look at the whole process because although the mortgage interest deduction is a very important component of our industry, we also need general economic stability. And I just encourage everybody, whichever side of the aisle you're on, to actually read these things and look at what it can do viability-wise before we all just run off. But certainly elimination of that would put some pressure on housing, which it really, housing kind of led the way in and it's leading the way out. You really think that the politicians would try to find another way to solve their problems.
And any other big issues out there as we enter the new year that you're concerned about?
Well, the biggest issues out there right now on the horizon really are regulatory issues as the government starts to enforce Dodd-Frank and the Consumer Protection Finance Bureau. Their rulings on what are qualified mortgages, what aren't, how the fee structures will work. There's a lot of regulation out there that's kind of nebulous, undefined, and it's always scary when the government's trying to figure out how to make your industry better, because normally when they get involved it doesn't end too well.
Well, the pendulum does have a tendency to swing. After there's excesses on one side, it tends to swing perhaps a little too far on the other side.
It's just the market tends to react faster than the politicians. So the market has kind of solved itself. The lenders have figured out the mistakes they made. It wasn't hard. You should make somebody put some money down on a house. They should have credit. You should actually verify their assets and their taxes.
I remember the good old days, right? A little money down. You actually had to have income. Those seem to be pretty prudent standards to run an industry.
Yes,
right?
It's not like anybody had a hard time figuring out if you have no skin in the game, you walk away from your house at the first problem. And so I think the mortgage industry itself has kind of solved a lot of those problems. And now the government's coming along and trying to solve it again, and I think that's puts even more pressure on housing, which just isn't good for anybody, because we really need to sustain the housing market to really keep this economy going.
All right. Well, I'm sure a lot to watch over the next few weeks with the discussions in Washington and more to come as the government tries to sort out what role it needs to play in the industry going forward. Tom Hosack from Northwood Realty. Best of luck in the new year. Hope it
Thank
goes
you.
Well. Yeah.
You also.
Next up, a local construction company wins a national award for ethics in business. Stay with us.